want to say? Okay.
Greetings, everyone. I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank the Mayor of Annapolis. I want to thank all of our council persons, those that are in attendance today and those who are at home and conducting business elsewhere. We also want to take this opportunity to introduce our town hall. In particular, today's town hall is about the impact of COVID-19 on the African-American population. These are difficult times, and we know that. And during difficult times, what we all have to do is do our best to work together and also work in a proactive and progressive manner so that we're able to listen, hear, and come up with ways of better connecting with the people that are important to us. So today we want to continue what we've been having, which is weekly virtual town halls. And we have asked all that are attending online that they submit questions. There were some questions submitted in advance, but we want you all to submit via our website and our other social media platform, in particular our Facebook page. So if you want to share this, please do so. So to kick this off, what we do know is the data that has been shared widely is that COVID-19 has affected certain populations disproportionately. In particular, the populations of African Americans and Latino. We also know that part of that at-risk and high-risk population are senior citizens and those who have compromised immune systems. So this right here is an opportunity for us to learn new ways to be of service to all of our communities and to all of those people that have been impacted by COVID-19. Keeping in mind that the population of African Americans in the city of Annapolis is not monolithic, nor do they live in the exact same place, work in the exact same places, and that they are varying communities with varying and different lifestyles and the industries that they work in. So we have a spectrum of panelists today from the health and mental health, as well as nonprofit, policymaker side, medical, social services, education, faith-based community, as I said, mental health, small business, and also, an added really awesome part is that we're focusing also on what's happening in the arts community, particularly in the African American population. So we have a guest who will be speaking to that. So the topic of this discussion today is important for all the reasons that we all know. One of the things that we do know, again, is that we have an opportunity to further connect with populations that are impacted. And today, as I said, we have a spectrum of hosts who have a spectrum of areas of expertise, and they're experts in each of those areas as both thought leaders and also content experts. So these are the panelists that are joining us today. We have Mayor Gavin Buckley, and Mayor Buckley will give our opening, and he will also frame today's conversation as being the mayor of the city of Annapolis. We also have Alderwoman Rhonda Pendell Charles, and she is the Ward 3 City Councilwoman. We also have Delegate Shanika T. Henderson, Esquire, and she is in the Maryland House of Delegates in District 30A. We have Dr. Kai Boges de Bruin, PhD, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Health and Human Services for Anne Arundel County. We also have Dr. L.E. Gomez, and Dr. Gomez has a number of letters behind his name, like MBA and FAAEM, and he is in emergency medicine. He's also an expert on inclusion and diversity in the medical field. Joining us also is Adetola Ajayi, who works in the mayor's office, and he is the African American Community Services Specialist. We have Pastor Cheryl Marindez, who has had some technical difficulties in terms of her video in joining us, but she's joining us through her microphone, and hopefully we'll get her video set up. She's with Light of the World Family Ministries and also Restoration Community Development. And then you'll hear more from her. Joining us also is Octavia Brown, who's a mental health clinician. Thank you for joining us. Angela McKay, who is a business owner and both a woman and an African American in the city of Annapolis, and we're pleased to have her on today's panel. And rounding us out are Thornell Jones, who is a member of the Caucus of African American Leaders. He's also an ACT representative, and he's also a retired physicist, which I wanted to throw in there because that's fascinating to me. Lastly, we have Comacel Brown Jr., who's a father, a painter, an entrepreneur, a graphic designer, as well as an activist. Thank you for joining us. That is our panel today. Now I'd like to introduce and bring to you all the mayor of our city, Mayor Gavin Buckley.
Nice to see some faces without masks. You all look good. So thank you for letting me be part of this. We're all living through history now. Our kids are going to learn about this and future generations about how this happened, how we got here. I remember leaving Australia in February and coming back and just catching the playoff game at Annapolis High. And people were high-fiving and hugging each other and handing me babies. And we just heard about this thing that was about to affect all our lives, but none of us took it really seriously. We're like, it's just the flu, right? It can't be that bad, really. And I guess we've learned that it is one of the biggest challenges that we are going to face in any of our lives. So I believe our city's been proactive. I believe our county has been and our state has been on the forefront of doing it right. I look around the country and I see the recklessness in other states, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. I sat at St. Anne's in the middle of Church Circle during the Open Maryland protests and watched the kind of vitriol and the hatred of people. And I understand the frustration, but I ask of these guys or these people who I hope went home and had an infection party afterwards. Just kidding, I'm among friends. I ask, think about your parents, think about your grandparents. It's not just about you. It's about other people that you come in contact with in your life, and that we all have to be more considerate and we all have to listen to other people's perspective. We have tried to get information from different parts of the city. Our town halls have been as varied as reaching out to small business owners who are the backbone of our city. Our city is made up of independent business owners. They are an important part of our city. We've reached out to young people to see how they're feeling. We know it's the hard work. It's Mother's Day coming up, and I'm sure mothers are like doubling down, tripling down on all the work they have to do already, and then have our kids under our feet and dealing with that. So I'm sure they're going to need a good breakfast in bed on Sunday from any of you boys out there. We have also done this kind of event. I need to hear from people in the community. I haven't lived the experience that many of you have lived, and I need to know how we can shape policy and what we can do to make this city a better city. This disease doesn't discriminate. You can be old or young, black or white or Latino. You can be rich or poor, and you're just as vulnerable as the next person. And so I hope that at the end of this, when we realize, the people who have put themselves in the front line, who are plenty of community people that we all know, nurses and hospital workers and firefighters and doctors, that we have a better appreciation for what they've done and what sacrifice they've made it. I know this city, the City Public Works employees have been showing up and making sure that the trash is picked up, making sure that the water is clean and that the sewage processing plant is working. All the things that we take for granted are so important now as we worry about the future. And as we worry about the anxiety, as the anxiety sinks in and we wonder about, are we going to have our jobs afterwards? What are our kids going to be like from schooling from home? There's many, many different things that are impacting us. But I hope that on the other side of this, and I speak especially to the African American community who has endured so much hardship and actually probably knows how to deal with it better than us because you've had to deal with so much, that after this, we become a better society, that we have more compassion, and that we realize that if the things that divide us don't matter anymore, because this world has to come together to solve this problem. So I believe that we'll hold on to the good things after this. I've seen incredible kindness in the last few months, from the food drives to the testing stations that we've done in communities to just an unbelievable way that the police department are handling the community in terms of no arrests, trying to de-escalate things, trying to make people understand that we are doing things for your own good. From the firefighters, the way they were handling things. I've seen so much kindness and so much love, and I know that runs deep in this community. So thank you for letting me be here. I'm looking forward to the rest of the session.
Thank you, Mayor Buckley. To reiterate, one of the things we want to do is begin to unpack what some of those dynamics are in the African American community. Once again, even as you look at the faces that are on the screen right now, realizing that, we are not a monolithic population and we all don't experience things the exact same way. And that is the beauty of all of our communities, right? So just quickly, what I'd like to do is kind of help frame part of our conversation around COVID-19 and its impact with some data. So I want you all to take a look at this screen. And this is our most current data in terms of Anne Arundel County cases and deaths by race and ethnicity. And what you'll see, my understanding is that it's somewhat not flip-flopped, but it's kind of changed a bit in terms of the confirmed cases and also deaths resulting from COVID-19 in certain populations of race and ethnicity. So you see 30% confirmed cases in the Black African American population, Asian 3%, Hispanic 19%, and white 48%. Number of deaths, 1% in Asian, 25% in African American, 66% white population, and Hispanic 7%. And we do have panelists that can help us unpack what this data means and give it some pertinence to our conversation and connect the dots on that. So I just wanted to share that to begin our conversation. So next up, we'll have Alderwoman Rhonda Pendell-Charles, who has done a lot of work on identifying what some of the gaps in services are, identifying which particular pockets of communities, not just in her own ward, but across our entire city, that need added resources and can benefit from partnerships. And I don't want to steal her thunder in saying what she does, but she has always been a champion of the mayor's office work, of the city's work, and of the council. And so I want to bring to you Alderwoman Rhonda Pendell-Charles.
Thank you very much, Will. And I am pleased to be on the panel with such an auspicious group of people who work extraordinarily hard each and every day. As Will indicated, I represent Ward 3 on the council, which is basically the greater parole area, and have been on the council since 2013. I'm also the City Council's Public Safety Chair, so I work closely with our Police, Fire, and Office of Emergency Management. And the Office of Emergency Management is the lead office for our COVID-19 team. I have been with Anne Arundel County Public Schools as a school community outreach specialist since 2006. I'm currently in the Equity Office In that role, we are looking at the gaps. We are looking at why our children are not accelerating as they should. For 7.5 of those years, I was serving at Frank Herbert Harmon Elementary School. So I got to see up close and personal what it's like to be in a school setting each and every day. Before that, I was the program manager with the Office of Minority Health with Anne Arundel County Health Department. And at that point, I was the program manager, like I said, the Office of Minority Health, where we made sure the messages communicated with the African American, the Hispanic, and the Asian communities. And one of the highlights of that office is we had a very successful immigration forum. Before that, for 20.5 years, I served as a prosecutor before I retired in Baltimore City. There, I was the deputy chief of the Juvenile Courts Division, where I supervised 20 attorneys, 15 support staff, and our office alone handled over 30,000 hearings per year. From there, I went to the Family Felony Violence Division, where we prosecuted physical child abuse cases, and where appropriate, along with sentencing, our licensed clinical social worker on staff developed specialized and special specific social work probation conditions for the defendant, which included family involvement and support. And we also prosecuted companion domestic violence cases. I was with the Attorney General's Office for the Department of Natural Resources as an attorney, intern with the Public Defender's Office, graduated from University of Maryland School of Law, Morgan State University. I'm a lifelong resident of Annapolis. And so I have taken those experiences, those opportunities to try to be able to do what needs to be done when it comes to our children, when it comes to our families, our communities, especially in these pandemic times. And we have daily briefings, and the mayor is there. And it's unbelievable the things that need to be done. But I would put the city of Annapolis far away above any jurisdiction in the state of Maryland in coming together, coming up with strategic measures and things that we can do to help our families, our communities, our children, our parents. And I'm so proud to be a part of this team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Thank you, Alderwoman. Next we will have, and we will get back with each panelist with questions, and we will pull questions from viewers. So just to keep it moving, our next panelist is Delegate Shanika T. Henson, Esquire, who will give a summary of the work that she's doing and all of her areas.
I want to thank you for including the T in my name, William. Appreciate that. Thank you. And I want to tell you, you have finally got Alderwoman Pendell Charles on Facebook. So you have done a lot today. Outstanding. Mayor Buckley, I want to commend you on your leadership on putting this panel together and hosting this. You've done a number of things that have really put groups together, people who want to have their voice heard, and an opportunity to engage a number of the city's youth just a day or so before your youth town hall. And so to see the opportunity to have their voice heard in the way that you did was just outstanding. And then to put this town hall together as well. African Americans, we obviously speak the same language as everyone, but that does not mean that the needs of the community are the same as everyone's needs. It doesn't mean that the way that you address or access the community is the same. So to see your leadership reach out and to specifically focus and target to say, how do I address what's going on there? How do I make sure that resources are being targeted? How do I hear from specifically that community? I commend you on your leadership to have a listening ear and to want to know what's the best way to make sure that you are addressing the concerns there. So I thank you for that. And I always found your leadership to be one that was had a broad perspective in that way from my time on the council to now as delegate. So I commend you on that. And I thank you for hosting this forum today. And William, thank you for moderating as well and for inviting me to attend and to be here with all of these distinguished guests that you have curated. It certainly looks like you will be able to touch on the different ways that we communicate, the different ways we receive, and the different ways we have been impacted as a community in the COVID-19 crisis. As a member of the Maryland House of Delegates in the General Assembly, it is the 50th anniversary of the Legislative Black Caucus. we are taking a specific focus on making sure that as a community, we are represented in a way that makes sure that our issues are brought before the General Assembly and makes sure that we return with policy that's going to be effective. We know that this is not just a health crisis, this is an economic crisis. And when we look at the community, we could say that we were in crisis long before COVID-19. When I look at just District 30A, the district I get the privilege of representing, I know that 28% of the people in the district who make under $25,000 a year are Black people. And I know in comparison, only 1% of that demographic are our white counterparts. So we know that we're disproportionately represented. 34% of the people before COVID-19 who were food stamp recipients in District 30A were our Black residents. We know that we're disproportionately represented there. We know that Black women are 2.5 times more likely to die in childbirth than our white counterparts. We know we're disproportionately represented there. So I would say that it wasn't COVID that was a crisis, but we were already in a state of crisis as a community. So now we just had the COVID crisis and the economic crisis, but that was just the third or fourth crisis that had already impacted our community. We were already in crisis. So it is something that obviously commands our attention because now the whole state is in a state of crisis. And so we are all now locked together, figuring out what our fate is going to be collectively. But I do hope that as a result of this, we will all find value. We will all shift perspectives. Fighting on behalf of residents that need affordable housing, that are living in public and affordable housing is something I've done for a long time. And I have always known that there was a lot of value there, that people who lived there were essential to my life because I have a lot of friends, a lot of family members, a lot of people I went to school with there. But now we all know that there are a lot of essential workers there, people who we have called on and asked to continue to go to work, asked to continue to provide the services that they do. So now I am hoping that perspectives will shift and we will now start to see budgets, we will start to see planning policy, we will start to see all of those other things shift to focus resources there so that we will truly treat people like they're essential now that we have deemed them and required them to be essential. So I'm thankful to be here today with each of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Delegate Henderson. And can I just add, without pandering, this is why being involved in the political process is important for us as a community, is so that we can elect people like Delegate Henderson to really be able to unpack what some of those issues are, but also work on them and actively get up in the morning, focusing their expertise and energy on getting to some of these deeper issues. So thank you very much. So next we will have Dr. Kai Vilges de Bruin, who is with Anne Arundel County. And she is also someone that has opened her door to have conversations about really partnering in ways that create a pipeline for city residents and city government to cleanly interface with Anne Arundel County at various levels. And the mayor has an amazing relationship with our county executive that has served him well because it's allowed us as his staff and as council persons to all be able to meet with them, plan, strategize, and implement various strategies to actually improve some of our outcomes at the city level. And so thank you for that. So Dr. Kai.
Hi there, thank you, William. My name is Kay Bogus de Brown, and I think I have one of the most difficult names in the county to pronounce. But I am the DCAO of Health and Human Services for the county, and I'm overseeing the Human Service Coordination for the COVID-19 response. I bring greetings from the County Executive's Office and thank Mayor Buckley for giving me this opportunity to share the work that the County Health and Human Service Departments are doing to support the individuals and families during this emergency. I'm also very interested in learning more about the community's concerns so that we can take those back and work to come up with strategies to address them. All of our county departments have been working with our nonprofit organizations and community volunteers in an amazing way to ensure that those who need it the most have access. Some of this work falls under our normal operations. However, the delivery looks very different, as you can imagine. I'd like to quickly mention that while our HHS departments are responding to emergent needs, their regular critical operations have shifted to telephonic and virtual services in most cases. Additionally, we still have some public-facing services, and staff continue to ensure the safety and well-being of children, youth, adults, and families. We have 4 main focus areas for the Health and Human Services core group: ensuring access to food, helping people stay housed, economic assistance, and emotional support, giving specific attention to our vulnerable populations. We recognize that our communities of colors are disproportionately affected by COVID-19. We've implemented the health equity call, meeting with community organizations and faith-based organizations. And anyone who has an issue that's reached out to me, I've taken time to connect with them and try and figure out what the challenges are. We're also trying to work to implement a new collaboration with the school system to work on specific issues that have arisen from the COVID-19 emergency. Most of our time is spent coordinating services between the departments, volunteer groups, and nonprofits. Logistics for this, solving problems that come up, identifying the gaps, and really trying to work through how to provide services that address those gaps and what our traditional services typically can handle. What I have seen is closer relationships between our agencies and departments, and strengthening and expanding services where they're needed. We're really trying to be flexible and adaptable. And for the government, that can be a real big challenge to do, but we're really trying to master that. So with that being said, I know that there's others that need to introduce themselves. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today with all of you.
Thank you, Dr. K. So I do apologize for completely, in every way, saying your name wrong.
That's the first time that's ever happened to me.
Well, it's weird because I don't think I could have gotten it any more wrong than I got it. But let that be no indication of the level of esteem that I hold you in, please.
Thank you. No worries at all.
Sure. And thank you for joining us today as a panelist. But again, also thank you for touching on some of those issues that are incredibly important, particularly for the African American community, but all communities again. So thank you for your service. And again, this convening as a virtual town hall, I just want to check in with all of us about one of the key purposes. Even though we have a large panel and there's a lot of conversation that's taking place, we do want to know that we are convening this so that the mayor of this city has an opportunity to hear, connect, and then circle back around to have a deeper conversation and strategize again on how we can connect the dots on these things. So Mayor Buckley is here, and as we proceed, if there are questions you have of him or a comment that you want to make to him, you can definitely feel free to do so after we finish our introductions. Next, we have Dr. L.E. Gomez, and in some circles, he needs no introduction. He's quite prolific, and he's been working in a number of areas. We've worked together on a lot of advocacy efforts. So he's involved in both politics as well as advocacy and absolutely the medical field. But he's also someone who closely deals with some of the issues that we're talking about and understands the spectrum of issues that face what we call the African American community. And some call it Black, but there's an entire diaspora. So Dr. Gomez? I think you're on mute.
All right, is it working now? Sorry about that. So, yeah, thank you for the introduction. I'm going to keep it informal because even though you haven't seen much of me the last couple of weeks, the last few months I started as a medical director for the largest public health clinic system in District of Columbia. So I've had my hands full here, but this is, as Shanika alluded to previously, the crisis that we're seeing and the disproportionate impact on people of color and the Black community in particular is really no surprise to us in the sense that we've been struggling against creating awareness about disparities for years and kind of warning that this is what happens when you don't address these things over decades of knowing that it's going on. So to my friend the mayor, this terrible situation affects all people, but it disproportionately affects people of color because the burden that they bear, we bear, and the African American community on a regular basis with regard to medical care and health access is so skewed. I couldn't sum it up quickly. The system of clinics that we operate here at Unity Healthcare in DC takes care of the underserved, the underinsured, the insured, corrections, the homeless. So it's been incredibly busy and incredibly challenging the last several weeks. The disproportionate impact, which we're seeing across the country, couldn't be more stark here in the District of Columbia. 80% of the people that have died of COVID are African American, and 50% of those hospitalized are African American. That's the pattern across the entire country. You'll see that in communities where people of color make up about a quarter of the population, more than half of them are the people that are hospitalized, and more than 80% of the ones that are actually perishing in intensive care units. So I'll leave it there, and we can go on to discuss some more of the details. But my concern is to just create attention around the fact that there are many good reasons why this is occurring, and many reasons that can easily be addressed if we take a hard look and we aggressively go after the disparities that are this is the result that we get when we don't address them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Gomez. I think what you said needs I don't need to say what you said again, other than as we begin to dive deeper into some of the questions from viewers, but also some of the questions that I may have for you, we can kind of unpack what's happening locally, because those trends are across the entire country. We want to be sure we're able to attack those disparities head on. Next panelist that we have is Adetola Ajayi, and as I said, he works in the mayor's office. Adetola?
Greetings, everyone. My name is Adetola Ajayi, work in the mayor's office. I'd like to thank Mayor Buckley and the City Council for investing in a position to focus on making sure African Americans are connected to city services. Some of the things I've done in the city are program development and implementation around substance use disorders, particularly around the fatal opioid overdoses that were happening in the city. We made a successful program called NAM, which stands for Naptown Anti-Dope Movement, that we allowed us to go into communities and bring resources to underserved communities, particularly around the stigma of substance use disorder and mental health. We've also done some reentry programming. We had a reentry fair in January, had about 30 people expunge their records, and we brought in job providers as well. We also have a program called Startup Annapolis that we've been working on the last 2 years to bring technology into communities that are pretty much on the side of the digital divide that's not allowing them access to, Wi-Fi or smart technologies. So with this COVID epidemic, we've seen the need to lean more on the use of technology and also, recognizing that though systems are free, that access to them needs special marketing or special consideration to cultural content. So thankful to be on the panel and looking forward to conversating about how we can work together.
Thank you, Tola. And again, I think I might be muted. Thank you, Tola. And again, we'll expound upon some of that work that's been coming out of the mayor's office and a lot of the work that Tola has been doing. A lot of it has been obviously focusing on fulfilling some of the gaps in services, as well as our ability to kind of really envision a process that is symbiotic between the residents that we serve and the political side that happens in the mayor's office and in the city. And kudos again to our mayor for investing in the space to be able to do that, which is really powerful in this city. So our next panelist is Pastor Cheryl Marindez. And I think she's had some technical difficulties. Can you hear me, Pastor Marindez? Okay, great.
Okay.
All right.
I'm here, but I may cut off. So this is Sheila Marindez. So I'll do this really quick. Thank you all for inviting me to be here today. I'm really excited because to have this opportunity to work with the mayor's office. Mayor Gavin has been amazing, along with the city of Annapolis, the police department, on our most recent venture of that speeding in Annapolis. I think it has gone extremely well. Can you still hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'm.
You can hear me. Okay. So it's been an amazing event. Will and all of you who have been there, the EMS, the city of Annapolis, the police, the fire departments, for the last several weeks, we have done, I would imagine, about 5 to 6 feeding events in the city of Annapolis. But my background, I lived in Annapolis for 30 years until my husband's death. And I actually have an MOU. We work with Anne Arundel County Public School Systems. We have 2 behavioral health adolescent recovery clubhouses, one of which is in the city of Annapolis. One of the pieces for me right now is to work with the city and the county, because we also have an Anne Arundel County food bank that's in, actually it's Maryland Food Bank, that's in Brooklyn Park, where our other office is. But we have the children who are in the Robinwood community, and we work with HACA, and we're really excited about this partnership. Especially, I have never seen anything go so well as I have in the last few weeks, and working with Chief Simmons, Annapolis Assistant Chief Mandel, who I say is my next best friend right now. My concern also is about working with children and families who are dealing with ACE, that adverse childhood experience, for those children who we work with every day, who are still dealing with issues and trauma from childhood. And we know now that it goes into your adult life. I think I only had a few minutes, so I think I'll stop right there. And if you have any questions for me, I have worked with the health department for 21 years. We've worked with the LMB, which is the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families, for about 18 years now. And we are an Anne Arundel County Public School site at my building in Brooklyn Park. It's the ACE program that's there. And then we have 4 or 5 other schools that we work with in Anne Arundel County. But my passion right now is about feeding. The mayor was there. You all were there when you saw that we had to turn away 100 cars Monday before last after feeding 618 people, 18 cars with over 1,000 and some people, family members. And that seems to be a continuing pattern. So I'm very, very passionate about us seeing something happening in Annapolis where we can adequately feed persons, because we know there's a lot of, and there's someone there to talk about mental health, but we also know that there's something going on in the household, and when people can't eat and they're not getting healthy food. So there's another whole level of trauma that takes place, and I'm going to stop right there.
Well, since you are having technical difficulties and we have you here now, I want to ask you about ACE. Can you tell us a little bit about ACE?
Okay, well, the study was done back in like 1995 that dealt with Kaiser, and I'm going to go back into my building, and I hope you can still hear me. Kaiser Permanente, because the stress deals with, it stands for, as I said, adverse childhood experiences, and it can include things like physical and emotional abuse, neglect, mental illness, household things that are taking place. So if a child is wounded, like between those ages of 0 to 3, we're finding out that that affects like the amygdala and other parts of the body, and it affects your fight or flight syndrome. So even
Okay. So a couple of things have either happened. She's either turned into a robot or she's out of space. But when she kicks back in and her signal improves,
saying that they are
there we go.
Or they have all of these issues. When I'm finding out in the schools that we're working with them. Okay. Are we back?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Okay. So I'm upstairs in my office in Glen Burnie, so that's probably one of the challenges. But one of the pieces that I was talking about, so people can experience many ACEs. We give an ACE test. It's just about 10 questions that deals with like violence, sexual abuse, types of things that would create trauma. Did the parent or another adult in the household often push or grab you or slap you? Did an adult attack you in any way that used profanity? Did you come from a family that you often felt like your family didn't love you, or you didn't have enough to eat? Now listen to this, and that's one of the challenges we're having right now, or the opportunities for growth. You didn't have enough to eat. You had to wear dirty clothes. Were your parents ever separated or divorced? Was your mother or stepmother, did they push you, grab you, slap you? Did you live with anyone who had a problem with alcohol or any types of drug? And was your household member depressed or mentally ill? Did anybody in your household go to prison? So when you think about that and what happens out of those 10 questions and what they evaluate you on it, how many of those ACEs did you actually have? And Dr. Nadine Burke, who is also a pediatrician in California, one of the things that she did was a test too, to see that we're finding out so many of our youth have been a victim of abuse. So the ACEs, of course, can also affect you later on in your life. Your emotional, your physical, all of those things cause dysfunction. And it causes children sometimes for fight or flight. So if there was something that took place in my life, let's say, and it hurt me to the extent that it can cause fear, then what happens, that goes into my mind, my brain. And then when that event happens again, then what happens, you can respond or react differently. So, and then we know that you have greater opportunities for poor outcomes later in life. And it increases even diseases like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, depression, substance abuse, smoking, poor academics, even in school. So, and it can cause early death as well. Okay. So it's called toxic stress.
So I had another question that kind of segues from what we have been talking about. And one of the things the mayor wanted to do and stressed in our conversation was to have it be both progressive, have it have outcomes that are meant to strengthen and build up not only that connection and communication, but to also not be deficit-based. So the question I have for you on that same thought is, has there been any silver lining or opportunities during this pandemic and during this crisis that have presented themselves to you? Pastor Marindez. Can you hear me? Okay. So what I will do is transition and ask.
Absolutely.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
For the first time, I have really felt, and don't y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can hear you. Are you talking to me?
Yes, ma'am. So the question is, has there been any silver lining or opportunities created by these tumultuous?
Well, the silver lining, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well,
it's coming in and out.
Okay, so let me run down steps for a second. What has been amazing, Will, is the relationships that have been built. And when you're dealing with ACEs or with these challenges or opportunities for growth.
Okay, we're going to have to transition. Can you mute? So, Mayor Buckley, I want to ask you that question for a brief answer from you. And I know you're a positive fella. So the question is, has there been any silver lining or opportunities that you've observed that come out of some of what we've been going through with the COVID-19 crisis? You're muted. You're muted.
Well, I still don't, are you speaking with me or the mayor?
I'm speaking to the mayor now because you dropped out right when you started. But I'll loop back over to you. Mayor Buckley, are you unmuted?
Yeah. So I definitely, the relationships, like you said, that we built over this time, I think that I always say about America, and I say this, that in our country, there is a disproportionate fear to people's experience, right? So, and I think that people, in terms of the community, they don't see the best. They don't see a firefighter or a nurse or a doctor. They have these ingrained prejudices, you know? And I think that that's something that we have to do to recondition this country. And I think this exercise now has made people realize that the people that are putting themselves on the line for them come in all different shapes and colors, and that's an important thing for us to build on. And so I think that we have to use this as a learning exercise. I think, you know, I'd say a little bit about this town. It's not like, what has the town done for me lately? It's not more, what can I do for my community? And I think this has shown a lot of people coming out to help the community. And so for me, that's great. The other thing is there are more people walking, there are more people biking, there are more people discovering outdoor spaces in the city and the county that they didn't know that were there. And I want that to continue after this, because we got to keep the good things when we get past the bad things.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Next up will be Octavia Brown. And one of the things I will say is her focus on mental health at the interpersonal level and the familial level did not just begin with the crises. This has been a building and a partnership operation with many of us to be able to deliver services to people where they live and where they currently exist, and do it in a culturally competent manner. And so, Octavia, I know you have a presentation, so we want to begin that. And thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you. All right, I'll try to be as brief as possible for Will gets me. He knows I talk a lot. So let's get this presentation up and running. I'll just say one brief thing about myself. I am a mental health clinician, a social worker who serves as a mental health clinician. And I have dedicated my life and my career to working in low-income urban communities and communities of color. So I'm going to specifically be talking about COVID-19 and how it relates to the Black community and the mental health of the Black community. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I just want to focus on 4 specific factors and how they influence of COVID and how they influence the mental health of the Black community. The first thing that I want to talk about is in which a number of our panelists has discussed, and I am so thankful for them bringing that disparity to light, that there is a huge disproportionate number of African Americans contracting and dying from COVID-19. And this absolutely affects the mental health of the Black community in ways such as there will be every person who passes away, every person who dies, that is someone's father, mother, sister, brother. So they have a family and a community of friends who they're leaving behind. And those individuals will have to suffer with the loss and the grief from losing their loved ones. There's also a huge increase in anxiety and depressive symptoms as a result of disproportionate numbers of African Americans and Blacks contracting from this disease. You know, am I going to be next? You know, and as the doctor stated previously, we already know the reasons why there's a disproportionate number. It is because of the healthcare disparities that exist. And so there can be a fear that, okay, if I contract this disease, is this it for me? I mean, this virus, is this it for me? Am I going to die? Am I going to be adequately cared for when I go to the hospital? And so all of these things affect our mental health. Also, job loss and economic impacts, which leads to increase in stress and its related symptoms in the Black community. It pushes Black community members into survival mentality, which we know absolutely impacts their abilities to care for themselves and their loved ones. Social distancing and isolation. The Black community is huge on kinship and family ties, and we are very connected to our community. And so having to socially distance ourselves and isolate ourselves, that's very difficult for us as Black people to do. And since we have such huge emphasis on relationships, isolation can produce feelings of loneliness and a reduced access to social supports. We are huge on depending upon our community and our family for our social support. And so that absolutely affects mental health in the Black community. And then last but not least, I want to touch on the mental health stigma in the Black community and the shortage of clinicians of color. It is important for us to be able to have clinicians who understand the very unique needs that we have as African Americans in this country and how to address that, you know, competently, and we just overall feel more comfortable a lot with being able to sit with an African American clinician. And unfortunately, there is not a huge number of African American clinicians. And then there's a huge mental health stigma in the Black community that we have to face, even if we decide that we want to go and get services. So we can do the next slide. So with all of those problems, I never give people problems without giving solutions. So let's focus on some interventions on a community level, which is all from my people who are working in the community, the advocates that we have out here, those who are on the front lines of working in the Black community. What can I do to help with this issue? So first, you can check in on your community members as often as possible. You want to continue to use your social media platforms to educate and destigmatize mental health in the Black community. One of the great movements I have seen is therapy and Jesus. That is something that we want to keep pushing out there. Jesus creates these therapists for us and use them as resources, so we don't have to, you know, say no to therapy and just yes to Jesus. Jesus wants us to use therapy too. So continuing to use those platforms to educate on mental health and what that looks like. You want to know which agencies are offering mental health services and have clinicians of color on staff. There are 2 agencies that I can speak of right off the bat, which is one that I work at, Thrive Behavioral Health. We have a number of African American clinicians on staff. They accept medical assistance, and Arundel Lodge also accepts medical assistance and private insurance as well. And then it is very important for community members and leaders to know what to do when someone is experiencing a mental health emergency. If a person is suicidal or experiencing active psychosis, which is delusions or hallucinations and things in that nature, or any other mental health emergency, you want to contact Anne Arundel Crisis Response at 410-768-5522. And if all else fails, you can call 911, but it is very important for you to inform officers that the community member is dealing with a mental health crisis and should be treated as such and not as a criminal. That will be very, very, very damaging to an individual if a police officer goes and does not approach this individual in the correct way as someone who is needing help. The next slide. On an individual level, this is what you can do. Stay in contact with family and loved ones as often as possible. It is very hard for us not being able to be around our loved ones. So call them, FaceTime them, making sure that you're talking to them as often as possible. Know your resources in case of a crisis. If you're having any suicidal thoughts or you're experiencing some very overwhelming mental health emotions or symptoms, the same thing, contact Anne Arundel Crisis Response. If you yourself have to contact 911, make sure that you advocate for yourself. I am a person who is dealing with a mental health illness or symptoms of mental health. Please do not treat me as someone who has broken the law or as a criminal. I need your support. I need your help. Know the signs of mental health illness. If you're having depressive symptoms or anxiety symptoms that are persisting more than 2 weeks, or mood swings that you're really having difficulty controlling, that's when it's time for you to reach out for help. And most importantly, know your community advocates that you can connect with here. You have myself, I'm here. My phone number is listed. You can call me anytime, day or night. We have Tony and William Pratt, Devon Gay, Dee Ward, Amy Cruz, William Rao, Tola. These are just a few people who are very much in the community and are here to help you. Be intentional about engaging in self-care techniques daily. And I'm going to talk just about a couple of those. Go to the next slide. I'm going. Self-care techniques for Black and brown people. Yes, we are different. The way that we self-care is different. So I just want to touch on, despite the fact that we are strong and super resilient people, from everything that we have encountered in this country, as far as slavery, Jim Crow, police brutality. There's a whole nother slew of information that we just received from an individual who was Black and running in the community and got shot and killed. That stuff affects us. And even though we are so strong and resilient and we hear these stories over and over again, or it happens to, our family members, or we've been, victims of discrimination, we have to get rid of the idea that we can just pick it up and keep it moving. We have to take care of ourselves. And so we must learn to not only survive, but to thrive. So simple things such as eliminating toxic energy and people from around you, practicing yoga or meditation, burning sage or other aromatherapy oils. These are perfect ways to engage in self-care, and absolutely, talking to people who understand what it is that we go through as African Americans can help you as well. Next slide. And last but not least, I just want to repost these resources. Thrive Behavioral Health, they accept medical assistance. We have clinician of colors on staff. I work there. I work very hard to make sure that we are culturally competently trained and we know how to work in the urban and Black community. I'm Arundel Lodge as well. I have a relationship with the director there. And then, of course, I have a social work YouTube channel. I put out a lot of videos educating and empowering the Black community and on mental health. So subscribe to the Urban Social Worker and you can get much more information that's longer than 3 minutes. So I'm done.
That was time well spent, honestly. And because information is power. Information is power. And I want to thank you for that. I think we all thank you for that. That was comprehensive and not tedious at all. So thank you. Thank you very much. And we will loop back with you because this is all about resources. And this is a native Annapolitan who just gave that presentation and is serving her community. So thank you so much. I also want to, while we're on this subject, we all know Bishop Craig Coates, also Annapolitan, business owner and other things. He wanted to let us know that they have 21 therapists available through Fresh Start Church. The phone number for viewers out there who may need it is 410-766-0217. And they are available Monday through Friday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And if you want to get connected, there's an opportunity for you all, because we must break that stigma, as multiple panelists have said. So next up, and moving right along, we have Angela McKay, who is a business owner. And I'll give a shameless plug. It's called Braid Boss, and amongst other businesses, I'm sure. And so, Angela, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me well? All right, great. So thank you for having me. Like Will said, I'm a business owner, have the Braid Boss Salon, but we also offer barber services as well. We've been in business for a very short time in Annapolis. We just moved to Annapolis about 3 years ago, and started the business a year and a half. So this doesn't, a COVID-19 doesn't come at a great time for anyone, but a new fledgling business is definitely has its challenges. So, but we moved to Annapolis because of the opportunity to open this business, and we were warmly welcomed by you and Tola at our grand opening and ribbon cutting, and we thank you for that. Want to thank the mayor also for all that he's doing for the city and for giving small businesses the opportunity to operate here. I'm also participating on the mayor's small business as a co-chair of the mayor's small business recovery task force for minority and women-owned businesses. And so I want to say at the start that anyone who has a minority or female-owned business who is having some challenges and needs some resources, please feel free to email me, and I will work to help you locate the resources that you might need and get the answers that you need. My email address is Angela, ANGELA, McKay, MCKAY, 101@gmail.com. I have a experience in large business. I spent 22 years working for IBM, and it was an amazing opportunity to gain a lot of experience in understanding large businesses. I think it all be able to create a small business. And when we moved to Annapolis, what we were looking for was how could we serve our community? And that's how we came up with a braiding and barber salon, because we looked around and we saw that there are a lot of people in our community who didn't necessarily have transportation to get around. And we asked, where do you go to get your hair cut? Where do you go to get your hair braided? And, they say we catch the bus to go here, or we catch a cab to go there. And we said, okay, that's the business for us. And we were warmly welcomed in the community. We love working with our folks. I spent a lot of time sitting in the salon just talking to people about, what their needs are, what's happening in the community, and really trying to understand Annapolis. And the more I learned, the more I fell in love, not only with the people, but with the city. It's an amazing place. And so I want to do all I can do to help businesses to get back on our feet. And we know that there are so many challenges because most small businesses, we don't have, we didn't start by getting big loans to open businesses. We reached in our pockets. We got money from friends and family, or, we took out loans against our homes in order to start these businesses. So as we look, there's a lot of suffering happening in the small business arena because we don't have the deep pockets, or we don't have necessarily the connections to get what we need to stay afloat.
Okay.
So I look forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Angela. So next up, let me actually respond a little bit to what Angela said, because what we do know is it is often challenging for any small business to stay afloat. And so, again, the city of Annapolis has, through various departments, has prioritized helping those businesses thrive, but also one of the mayor's key priorities coming in was to streamline the process and allow businesses greater opportunities to be helped by the city. So that's something we're currently working on, and we'll have other conversation as we proceed. So next up is Thornell Jones. Thornell, as I said, is deeply involved in a lot of different efforts in our city and our county, and respect him tremendously. So Thornell Jones.
Hi, everybody. Mayor, I'm so happy to be able to be here today. I thank you, Will, for inviting me. I want to talk about 4 things: housing, education, leadership, and leisure activity. Because housing is basic, there's a serious problem in Annapolis and Anne Arundel County with housing, and I just don't think that we're on the track to solve that problem. Every year, there's more and more people who are looking for subsidized housing, and there is no way for us to build subsidized housing unless we change the way we deal with real estate. So we need to set a task force together to talk about how we are going to solve this problem instead of just saying we have this problem. It's time to solve it. Number 2, I want to talk about education, because the school systems here are not doing the job, and they're not doing the job because the people who run schools aren't trained to do the job. A $1.2 billion budget, you actually need people who understand business. And the people who go through schools of education really don't have that. I know it because the mayor has an office of emergency management. The school system doesn't. They have a budget bigger than yours, I'll bet you. And I'll bet you they need an office of emergency management. Then they wouldn't have had this problem with computers, because they would have known ahead of time that if there was an emergency, students who don't have computers can't compete. And by the way, those same students weren't competing because they didn't have computers already. While many students went home at night and used computers to find out information, these students didn't. So it's clearly a problem. I'll just piggyback on that by saying, even though the governor today did not pass the blueprint for Maryland, it is very important for all of us to support that blueprint and understand the details of it so we don't let any of it go by. It is the future of Maryland and the future for our children. So we really do have to pay attention and make sure that they establish a very strong accountability and implementation board, and that the leader of that is a very strong person. Somebody like Herman Rabowski would be great. Okay? Now, why do we have the problems we have? Our Black community in Annapolis, is not developing leaders. Now, I know about leadership because I spent 32 years with IBM, and I got involved with Boy Scouts when my son was a scout. And he's an Eagle Scout. What did I learn when he became an Eagle Scout? All that process was about learning how to be leaders. And my son, who's almost 60 years old today, when he calls me, we talk about the skills of leadership with his business and the business of people he works with. So leadership for our community is absolutely important, and every church in our community ought to have a Boy Scout and a Girl Scout troop and be developing leaders, because it's the future of this community is going to be more Black than you can think, and Hispanic. And they are going to need leaders from in the community, and they need to be developed. The last thing I want to talk about is leisure activity, because that's another way of developing leaders. And this city and this county has more water than most places in the world. And who's on the water? The kids in this community aren't on the water. They're not on the water because all these people, the real estate has just promoted people buying land on the water, buy little houses, make them big, buy little houses, make them big. What is that doing for our community? It's keeping our kids off the water. They need to be on the water, learning how to boat and be safe on the water, learning how to become leaders, followers first, and then leaders, and then translate that leisure activity into activity on the land for business, for education, etc. Now, bring all that together and let's talk about how we're going to grow this community so it has real feet.
There you go. And you just taught a masterclass and in a very short period of time. And I really do hate to cut you off, but in lieu of time, we got to keep it moving. And we're going to loop back to you, Thornell. So thank you. Our last panelist is Comacel Brown Jr., who is an accomplished artist, but also a person who is an influencer, not only in the arts community, but in our African American community and others, and not just in Annapolis. So Comacel, take it away.
First, I'd like to thank everybody on the panel for being here. Thank you to the mayor, the city council. Name is Comacel Brown, best known as Self Spitfire in the art world. Annapolis resident of wonderful Ward 3, headed by Rhonda Pintel Charles. I'm a graphic designer, graduate of Art Institute of Atlanta. And I've been trying to do anything in my power with my art and talents to be able to help fight mental health issues and help keep people active in this time, whether it be adults or children. I feel that I'm here to share the importance of art in our communities, in the household, and how that relates to mental health. I feel that the exposure to visual art and participation in creative activities, it creates positive brain changes. Creative outlets contribute positively to people's well-being. Art improves critical thinking and empathy. So, with that being said, one of the first initiatives that I did or projects that I did was with D Ward of Black Excel. 3 weeks ago, we went through several communities giving out art kits to anybody interested. And then later on that day, I went live on Facebook and Instagram to, just ease people's minds and give them something creative to do and follow along with me. We have a similar event going on this weekend for Mother's Day. We're doing an adult paint and sip. We have the event on Eventbrite. Anyone interested, please feel free to join. Again, it's to kick back, get your mind off of this pandemic and crazy stuff that we got going on right now. I've also am involved in an upcoming project with Jeff Huntington of Future History Now. We're going to be showing our praise and giving our love to all the essential workers that are out there battling and working crazy hours to help combat this. And also, I want to shout out Rob Levitt of Creating Communities. He helped partner with us for this Mother's Day event. So as we proceed on and take questions, I'll, tell you guys about more on how I feel the artwork can help us through this pandemic.
Thank you, Comacel. I want to jump right into some.
Muted, Will.
Okay, thank you. I want to jump right into some questions. I understand also that our Facebook feed is having some troubles. So welcome to the real world. But we're still live on YouTube. So I want to jump to asking a question of Delegate Henderson. And this question is a policy question. So what role does policy play in reforming some of the systemic structural racism and issues that have become more, even more evident during the current pandemic? How do we...
Policy plays a major role in reforming some of the structural issues that we've seen brought to light during the pandemic. We've seen even today, Thornell touched on the blueprint for Maryland's future being vetoed by the governor today. We know that the blueprint was the biggest reform in our education policy in 20 years. It was the biggest reform in a generation. We've seen in our own public school system the digital divide that was brought to light. To Thornell's point, that it was always there. It was only that the COVID pandemic and that people going to a distance learning model brought that to life. But it was always there between our students and what they were able to achieve outside of the classroom. So it's policy and setting a budget, it's policy and what you do, even when you give the different telecom providers access to the right of way that they need to be able to lay broadband and cable wires, and you require them to do so equitably. There are communities who have slower internet speeds. When you go to areas of high need, you know that it's harder to access the internet in those areas. Even if you purchased in and you were fortunate enough to do so, you still would have a slower speed than in areas that are even in more remote parts of the Annapolis Peninsula, but they have some higher connectivity speeds and they have better access there. So policy plays a major role. We know another pivotal piece of legislation that the governor vetoed today was the legislation that was funding our HBCUs. There's a long-standing lawsuit where the HBCUs had sued the state of Maryland because they have been disparately treated. They were receiving proper funding and proper treatment under the state of Maryland regime. The state had been having programs that they intentionally designed to compete with the HBCUs so that the HBCUs would not be competitive. And there was a piece of legislation that Speaker Jones put in this year to make sure that the HBCUs had adequate funding. It was $577 million is what they needed to be adequately funded so that they would be competitive and viable, but it's what they needed and what they deserve. And the governor vetoed that today. We know that for our Black professionals, HBCUs are responsible for 80% of the nation's African-American judges. We know that 27% of African-American STEM graduates come from HBCUs. We know that 50% of African-American teachers were trained by HBCUs. So when you decide to let your HBCUs fall into a state of disrepair and insolvency, what you're saying is you don't value Black professionals. So we know that policy plays a critical role in making sure that we repair the systemic and institutional divides that really keep us from being a community that can access and have all of the different potential that we have realized.
Thank you so much, Delegate Henderson. So this is another policy question for Alderwoman Pendle-Charles. And the question is, what recommendations can you give to craft responsive legislation to combat some of those barriers that Delegate Henderson just looked at for African Americans seeking business opportunities, education, healthcare, and/or housing in the city of Annapolis, and some of the work that you've done on the council. So what recommendations do you have in terms of crafting that kind of policy and legislation?
Well, I think first of all, we need to determine and get the data. The data will drive the legislation that we will proceed with on the council. We also have to recognize, and we applaud Delegate Henderson and her team, that the city does not have a school system nor a health department. So we are beholden to them in many ways. But the relationships that we have built with the county executive and our mayor have been critical. I mean, I remember when we had our first county executive, Joe Alton, back in the 60s, and I can truly say now this is the best relationship by far that we have ever had. So we do have to work on multiple levels when we're talking about housing, when we're talking about education, when we're talking about health. We have to communicate with our state and our county and even our federal partners. When we do that, oftentimes they have more of the global perspective. They can see aerially what we may not be able to see and bring to bear to our attention. We have had resolutions that supports much of this legislation, but the policy in many ways are driven by the state and the county. We're at somewhat of a disadvantage, but we are there to assist in whatever needs to be done. Local politics is where it's at in many ways. But when you're talking about those overarching issues, such as Delegate Henderson mentioned about broadband and all of that, they are privy and oftentimes to those things. But we can certainly serve as support systems. And we have had many of our delegates and legislators come to us and say, would you be willing to promote a piece of legislation in form of a resolution? And that gives a lot of teeth from our perspective.
Okay.
I want to divert one small thing that we've talked about and a few things.
I just want to remind you of time also.
We have instituted the African American COVID work group, and Mr. Ajayi and I have been working on that. That's coming to fruition. But talking to Mr. Thornell about the leadership, a couple of things in the water. And Adetola can talk with this. Year before last, Adetola and I came up with the concept of pop-up camps. And many of the pop-up camps that we have are either maybe 3 hours or they may be 3 days, but they're camp opportunities for children who may not be able to afford our traditional camp, which is a free camp. And I thank the mayor's office and the mayor for promoting this. So many of these pop-up camps are water driven. We've had several different organizations who have come forward who have provided these opportunities for our children as far as water access and water development, and have been extremely successful. In fact, CRAB, Chesapeake Regional Accessibility, they have actually, and I've talked to the principal, Mr. Dillard, and they have adopted Georgetown East Elementary School, and they will be working with those children when it comes to STEM, science, technology, from the water perspective. The other thing, because I've only been with the Equity Office since January, part of my proposal is that we take, because we're always looking for mentors and tutors, and it's a continuing process and it's difficult to do. And what I've advocated for is that we go to our high schools, whether it be the football team, the basketball team, which is heavily African-American, and have those players on a consistent basis come to our middle schools and our elementary schools, maybe twice a month, but we'd have to have a schedule, and we can provide the transportation to come and talk to those younger kids. Those younger kids look up to those high school kids. And the other thing is, too, they provide a leadership opportunity for the athletes, no matter what teams they may come from. So we're looking at doing that. And I've started the discussions at Annapolis High School when it comes to doing that. And we will have a continuum of leaders. We don't have to keep finding and begging and dragging people in every year to do this. So
Absolutely.
I just want to put those couple of plugs in there.
Absolutely. And thank you, Alderwoman Pendel-Charles. I know you are a font of knowledge and information, so I appreciate that. And I'm sure you can expound upon that for some time. But I want to do a time check and be sure that everyone is okay with time and no one has to leave, because we probably will go a little over. Is anyone okay with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Only by a couple hours. So the earliest we might get out is 7 o'clock.
It's well worth it.
Right. So briefly segueing from that, so we get to kind of some nuts and bolts things. And this is, so this goes from the question that someone had, Monica Lindsay, who had a question about the city investing in funds into activities for youth, which you touched on, Alderwoman. But I want to jump from that also into detailing a little bit about the programmatic piece that the mayor and city council has invested in order for us to do work in the African American community and other communities. And I want to tap Adetola Ajayi to give us a little background on some of those programmatic pieces. Tola?
Greetings. Yes, greetings again. So with One Annapolis, the One Annapolis initiative that the mayor has implemented has, reached into the African American community, not only through Recs and Parks, but as well through partnering with several community organizations and businesses in the city. Some of the events that we've done are the end of school celebrations, where we went into community. Last year we went into Harbor House and had a pool party per se with the young people on summer vacation. And then we've had 2 back to school celebrations, both years partnering with Bike Anne Arundel to give away bikes. Last year we partnered with Daisha Conti of RRMV. And then we've also partnered with several other small businesses and entrepreneurs to do events in the city. For example, we had a youth entrepreneurship fair. There was a health fair that we did under the One Annapolis banner. And we also partnered with Drug Free All-Stars to do a charity baseball game to raise awareness about substance use disorder and recovery treatment. Something that we had to postpone was the diaspora concert, which would have followed the Martin Luther King parade due to COVID. We are working on trying to reschedule that, possibly if we can find efficient public safety standards. And when Alderman Pendle Charles touched on the pop-up camps that we partnered with Rex and Parks, that was something that we're proud of. We had an e-gaming one-day tournament where young people were exposed to e-gaming competition. We're actually working to try to see if we can provide that through our Rex and Parks annually. We also had a drone camp, coding camp, photography camp for females. And then we also, 2 years ago, partnered with Kenny Starks to develop a community transitions, a teen camp program.
All right, thank you, Adetola. And I know, sorry, can you hear me? I know there's a long list of programmatic pieces, so I'm only cutting you short right now because we have to keep it moving, but we may have an opportunity to loop back to that. So I wanted to jump to a question specifically dealing with where we are right now and connecting services to the African American population and other populations that have been impacted. And so I want to ask Dr. K the question about when families, and because of families and individuals in Annapolis and in the county, that because we're all limiting face-to-face contact, many of the services we know that are available for people and those services that they may ordinarily use are closed, or they're meeting by phone or only online. So how are agencies across the county providing services during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you. That's a really good question. And it's one that we continually keep at the forefront of our conversations as we're assessing how things are going. Most of our agencies have transitioned to offering full virtual or online services or telephonic services. So depending on what the service is, if it cannot be done in person and it's not a mandated critical service, then they're able to use the online service or talk to people on the phone. For example, for someone who might be applying for SNAP or cash assistance, and they
I think you might have muted yourself. Okay.
So I was talking about SNAP and cash assistance, and if someone doesn't have access to the internet, they can call DSS's 800 number or the EOC and request that an application be mailed to them, or they can pick up an application. So those are the types of ways that we're trying to assist people. We have a number of people who are calling our seniors or persons with disabilities to the level of about 10,000 folks, just to touch base with them, to see how they're doing, to see if they have any needs. For individuals that can't get out of the house or they need groceries and they don't feel safe, we are coordinating with volunteers to help deliver food to their homes if they're not able or it's not safe for them to leave. So those are some of the ways. The Warm Line is always available to help individuals navigate either the continuum of services, or just to touch base. Many of the folks that are working there, and also the Emergency Operations Center at the county, have talked about sometimes they just get calls when people just want to reach out just to say hi and hear a voice. So we have worked with our staff to make sure that they know that's A-okay. We want to support that. We want people to reach out so that we can connect with them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I do have another question, but really quickly, I want to share information about testing, and the mayor has touched on that on our next opportunity. And it's a slide. So our alderwoman in her ward had a walk-up testing for COVID-19 at the Parole Community Center, Community Health Center. And as you can see on the slide here, the mayor spoke about that, but there is one also coming up. And that one is Monday, May 11th. And there's information on this particular slide. It's also in Spanish. And the number, if you want more information about it, but also to schedule a test, you can call 410-222-7256. And again, this is a partnership between Anne Arundel County, the City of Annapolis, and also our Office of Emergency Management. The Department of Health staff will be screening callers and schedule appointments by phone. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So my next question is for Dr. Gomez. And so this gets to a more health and physical health part of it. And the question is, can people without symptoms, including children, spread coronavirus?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to preface first that I'm a townie in Annapolis, and as a result, I've gotten to, I've gotten some insight into how some of the things that have been brought up by several people on the panel are impacting our community, and they are, so salient. But when you hear them disconnected, you might not connect the dots. So I just want to quickly connect the dots for a couple of things. Delegate Henderson mentioned education. One of the things that's impacting the disparity in how Black folk are getting treated or not treated is that there aren't enough Black physicians. You don't educate Black physicians, or you don't educate young Black people, you're not going to end up with Black physicians. What you end up with is a situation we have here in Annapolis where Anne Arundel Medical Center has maybe one Black internist, one male Black internist, and that's just that's not appropriate. That's given the community that they serve and bill. It's just irrational that that's the case. They've got diversity officers. They've got people in positions that are supposed to create this diversity in the medical staff, and that's not there. Another thing that causes the propensity to have this disproportionately impact us was brought up by Mr. Thornell Jones. Densely populated areas that are the result of longstanding institutionalized racism and redlining are what lead to residential housing segregation that makes social distancing almost impossible. Segregation itself exacerbates health disparities. We have food deserts. We have less access to medical facilities. We have people that are uninsured. We have a resultant lack of trust in the healthcare system that's making people not seek care early and only seek care when they're so terribly sick. There may be no turning back. So now getting around to your one more thing. Octavia Brown brought up the issue of how stressors disproportionately impact people of color. Well, these are the same things that result in chronic lung disease and asthma and heart disease and immunosuppression and cancer and smoking and obesity and diabetes. And these are exactly the things that cause the disproportionate impact on Black people when you see that we are the ones that are dying more often of this disease. then finally, to your point, Will, the conundrum around kids and opening schools is that kids can have mild symptoms and usually don't manifest the disease. I know, all of you have been looking at the numbers, see that kids aren't the ones that are seriously impacted. They usually have a mild disease, but they all can pass on the disease. They are to higher risk adults. And then add on top of that, we in the Black community tend to have multi-generational households. So if you have a child and an auntie and a cousin and an uncle and a granddad and a grandma, and that's how you end up with folks getting into a position where they can't observe social distancing. It's not part of our culture anyway. And of course, children are going to make this much more challenging proposition for the Black community than the rest.
Thank you so much, Ellie. So wanted to jump also while we're having a conversation about health to Octavia Brown. And we were talking about children and families and returning to school and being symptomatic and asymptomatic. How can we, and I want to remind us of time, so if all of us can try our best to keep, I'm in no way succinct, but if we can all try to keep our answers short. How can we dismantle pre-existing stigmas about physical and mental health treatment in communities of color? Because just as we're identifying all of these issues and we're identifying what all the problems are, we do know that there are, deeply rooted stigmas that, prevent people from taking that step to receiving care. Can you speak on that?
So there are two ways. Sorry, my kid is talking.
No, it's all right.
There are two viewpoints that we can look at this from. We can talk about how we dismantle the stigma of mental health within the Black community. Mm-hmm. And then we talk about how others, outside of the Black community can help to dismantle the stigma associated with it. And so when we speak about specifically within the Black community, we talk about it. We don't make it a taboo subject. You have no idea how many people will respond to you if you're the first one that says, hey, my name is Octavia Brown and I suffer from a mental health illness, which, by the way, I do. You know what I'm saying? And that's not something that, I keep a secret. I too have mental health illness that I had treatment for, and I am on medication and I take it daily. My family, they laugh. We call it my happy pills. And when we talk about it and we're open with it, and we begin to make it a conversation, more people feel comfortable to come out and say, hey, I struggle with that too. You know what I'm saying? And we make it intentional within our community that we seek treatment and we get healing because we deserve it. We deserve healing too. We're worthy of not suffering, against the contrary of what we, typically believe is that our lives are more than just filled with suffering. We too deserve peace. We too deserve contentment, and we deserve happiness. And so having that conversation and doing the things like, I do, using my social media platform to talk about mental health and say, hey, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? If you guys have anything you want to talk about, you don't have to be a mental health therapist to open yourself up to say, I'm here if you need to talk. You know what I'm saying? And so those are some ways that we within the community can help dismantle the stigma. But outside of the community, you have to educate yourself. And we have these microaggressions that people engage in, and they don't even understand that you are pushing people further away from wanting to seek mental health treatment. For an example, when you look at the differences of how white children are viewed with certain behavior issues in school and versus Black children, so if a white child is dealing with anger or disruptive behavior, it's automatically thought of, oh, well, there might be a mental health issue. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But when the Black child is doing the same thing, then it's, oh, this is a problem child. This is a behavioral issue. Everything behavioral is mental health. Everything behavioral is mental health. And it's not just for white people, but people of color as well. We are not different in that we don't experience mental health issues as well. And our behavior is the big sign that says, hey, I'm struggling mentally. That's how, with medical illnesses, you might have a rash, you might have, stomach pains. With mental health, it's your behavior.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's what we
absolutely.
look at this and say, hey, something might be going on. And so when people outside of our community can look and see that maybe this child is struggling with a mental health issue, instead of labeling that person as being disruptive or bad behaved, then we start to also get rid of that stigma by doing that.
Thank you so much. That was again a thorough answer. So I want to ask our mayor about. We've had conversations about food security. We've had conversations about mental health, but kind of a common strand is the conversation about equity and like how are we able to manifest the idea of that into policy and into how we do the work that we do. But in terms of your governance in the city of Annapolis, whether it be staffing, whether it be boards and commissions, or any of those other things, how do you view equity? Like through which lens?
I think you can you hear me? Sorry.
I can hear you.
I think, you have to reflect equity. So if you look at our office, if you look at the directors in the city of Annapolis, they look different to what they've looked historically. We have more representation from people in the community than has ever been seen in the city. And that's how I learn. I need those voices. I need that guidance so that we can all form better policy, and that we can also, kids need to see that. Kids need to look up and see a fire chief or a police chief or a director of planning or whatever it is. They need to show that they need to see that there's something to aim for, that gives them hope. And I think that's what our administration has been about. We have to give kids hope. Kids are grown up thinking it's hopeless. What's the point? Why should I try? I'm never going to get to this place or that place. And so hopefully we reflect it. We live by it in this office. And our goal is to make the city a better city. We've got a long way to go. We know we've got a ton of work to do, but we're trying to look forward and how we can leave it better than the way we found it.
Thank you so much. So one of the things, so we're going to dive deeper on that subject, and this is around policy also. It's a little broader, but this question is for Thornell. Understanding the historical legacy of the slave trade and of urban renewal in the city of Annapolis in the past, how important is restorative justice policies in developing equitable systems, moving forward?
Glad you asked that, because we have a really a sick justice system. We have a justice system that starts in kindergarten, where teachers start, as Octavia spoke about, teaching young children who have mental problems as if they're only behavior problems. And so they take that information they get from their teacher, and then they don't learn because they can't put the energy into it. And the process becomes school to prison. And so we have more people in prison than anywhere else in the world. Right here in this United States, and in Maryland is no slacker than that. Okay? So what we need to be doing in the schools, first off, is like Octavia said, we need to treat children who have mental problems of stress and trauma as if they have stress and trauma, not as if they're bad children and as they can't learn. And then we need to in the upper grades, we need to be using restorative justice, so people begin to learn why, all the students begin to learn why each other treats each other the way they do. And they would stop treating each other badly because they would see the results of how they're treating people instead of just kicking kids out of school, suspending them, putting them in separate schools. We need to treat people like they're people. And people people will much more just because they're being treated properly.
Thank you so much, Thornell. Thank you so much, Thornell. Words to live by. So I'm going to do a time check again, and I feel like we have had an opportunity for all the amazing panelists that we have to get to everything we want to get to. But I do want to reiterate the fact that this is a part of the process, and there'll be a lot more to do. And hopefully, maybe we can do this again and get more people involved in this process, so we can talk about other things and maybe some strategies. But I do want to ask a question in relation to business, because we've invested a lot of time and energy in being sure that our communities remain vital. So this is we're winding down. We have a couple seconds, but this is for Angela McKay, and this is how have small businesses, their owners, and their employees, from your vantage point, been impacted by COVID-19, and specifically small, women-led Black small businesses?
Well, part of the challenge is that, as business owners, we're wearing a lot of different hats. So we're not only business owners, we're also mothers, wives. And so with this COVID-19, I'm not experiencing this personally, but from others that I've spoken to and staff that's worked in the salon, the challenge is that they're now taking care of children at home who would ordinarily be in school. You don't have an income coming in. You have kids at home who are now eating more. And so, all these things are coming together at the same time. So that increases the level of stress. Honestly, they probably are, alcohol, plays into it. They're finding ways to self-medicate as this, is the stress increases. And so we need to find better ways to release stress. And even when, we are been approved to be open to serve essential employees, but we can't serve essential employees because our staff can't get childcare, because you can't take your kids any place in order for you to be able to work. So it's a catch-22.
Thank you so much. And those are, so I want to thank you so much, Angela, because those are points we definitely need to expound upon and get deeper. And the mayor has put a lot of work into that, even as this first jumped off. So I want to leave with the mayor saying the final word and saying, thank you all for being here. But I do want to share some resources really quickly on the screen so that we're sure we're giving the resources that we promised and information to people. So if you'll look at this, you'll see that these are some food and nutrition resources. We have the Maryland Food Bank and local pantries. So we ask that you visit them online at www.aafoodbank.org. If you email, text any of us on our city staff or county staff, they will provide you with this information. So you don't need to capture all of it now. We have grab-and-go meals that Anne Arundel County Public Schools have been providing, which is free breakfast, lunch, and dinner to children ages 2 to 18 on regularly scheduled school days. And that's from noon to 12:30 p.m. And there's a list of schools from Annapolis Middle School, Bates, Annapolis High School, Eastport Elementary School, Georgetown East, Mills Parole, Tyler Heights. There's also SNAPS benefits from the Maryland Department of Human Services. They are accepting new applicants. And to ensure the quickest turnaround, we ask that you visit dhs.maryland.gov. It's going to be very hard to capture this. But again, reach out to Hillary Raftovich in the city for more information about things of this. Lastly, Feed Anne Arundel. There's been meal giveaways, and all of us have been here, just about everyone who's on this panel and everyone all around. We've all, city, county, police department, OEM, everyone has been involved in these efforts, including, food and meal giveaways earlier on with Octavia Brown, and Tony Strong Pratt and others that have been working really hard in communities. So that was a mouthful, but I want to pass it over to our mayor so that we can all move on.
Mr. Rao?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we have 30 seconds with Mr. Carmicel Brown? I think he got a little shorted.
Okay.
Follow that up with a question. You want to lead that off with a question?
Yeah, well, I did. So one of the questions I did have was looking at arts and the role that arts plays in all of this. So I'm going to embed a couple questions in terms of social distancing and stay-at-home ordering. Like how does that impact children and families for you, and how important are the arts in helping with some of those things?
You picked a good question because for me, I've been uniquely put in a situation where I've already was working from home. So adjusting to the pandemic wasn't too difficult until I started to realize how the school systems was trying to function and get back on their feet. And with that being said, I had to find a way to keep my kid. I'm still trying to find a way to keep my kids focused and engaged with this whole social learning. And not only with keeping them focused, but keeping them on a strict bedtime. And because they just, even though you can tell them over and over that, school is still going on, you still have to take it seriously. It's still kind of hard for them to grasp. So it's been very difficult adjusting to scheduling, being able to focus on being a in-home graphic designer and being able to manage my kids all at the same time. But it's a challenge that I've been willing to take head on, and I've had to adjust my schedule and work late nights while they're sleeping and early in the morning while they're sleeping and, do as best as I can. But again, doing the artwork has been a way that I've been able to keep my kids sane, keep my community sane, and I'm hoping that it'll improve critical thinking and everything that's going on.
Thank you so much, Sel. And just remembering again that I do apologize for having to cut the entire thing short. Now we know we need at least 2 hours or even 3 hours, and for us to cover all bases. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I had about 5 questions for you and 5 for everyone else. So I apologize. So Mayor Buckley, would you like to lead us out?
So I just want to say thank you, Carmicel, for making beautiful things. I'm going to cede my time to Rhonda or Shanika. I just feel grateful that you would let me be on this panel. I learned a lot, and I'll let you guys take it out because I've talked too much.
Will?
Yeah. Yes, Tola.
Yeah, can I just give a shout out? We're partnering with Feed Anne Arundel, ACT, and several other community organizations to do a streaming concert on the 22nd of May. Just want to throw that out there. Thank y'all all. Please.
All right. Are there any other shout outs really quickly? But it has to be like a sentence.
I'd just like to shout out to this group right here. It's an amazing group. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to look at this glass half full. We know the challenges, we know the barriers, and we know which way to go. And we're going to keep on the road because that's what we do.
All right, thank you. And we'll still
Thank you all so very much. And Delegate Henderson.
Thank you. Will, you had an incredible task trying to take lots of different subject matters and areas that affect the African American community uniquely and trying to tie all of those things together in some sort of comprehensive format, and people who are subject matter experts in their own right in each of those areas due to the time they've invested. So thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Gomez, for taking the effort to really cede some of your time to weaving a thread through the things that were discussed today. I came into this with the intention of touching on 3 specific policy areas that were raised in my office, and that was housing, education, and public safety and corrections. Public safety and corrections is the only one that we didn't get a chance to touch on today. We know that African Americans are 30% of our state's population, but we are 70% of the inmate population that's serving long-term sentences. We know that 244 positive COVID tests have come out of our Department of Public Safety and Corrections facilities.
Yep.
So we also know that they have streamlined and taken off the ability to do in-person visitation. So please check on your loved ones that are in the Department of Public Safety and Corrections. You can do that through a phone number. It's 410-769-6419, 410-769-6419. The Department of Public Safety and Corrections has said that they are allowing video visitations and that they are allowing that for 15 minutes. I've had feedback from constituents that they're not getting those video visitations, and we've helped facilitate that for people. So if you're having any challenges and you live in District 30, please contact my office. But during this time, please don't forget about your loved ones that are incarcerated. Please check on them, 410-769-6419. Mr. Mayor, thank you for the platform. Thank you, each of you today.
Thank you.
Mr. Rao, I just want to bring up one thing when Delegate Henson, the school system since April the 26th now has a family information line where you can get help if you're having trouble with your internet access. Messages will be retrieved at least twice each weekday and forwarded to the appropriate person for a response. And that number is 410-222-5000. 410-222-5001. Thank you.
I have one shout out real quick. I just want to shout Sal out because calm Sal. Not Sal. Calm Sal. But no, and what he does is so essential. The arts in the Black community is so essential, and it is incredibly therapeutic and healing. And so I just want to shout him out to continue to do that work. And I love the events he's been putting together here lately involving the Black community and the arts. And so thank you for that. So we appreciate you.
All right, thank you. So does everyone, Ellie, you have any shout outs or goodbye message really quickly?
Darrell, this is Kay.
Yeah, oh.
I just want to say thank you for having me. I've written down a lot of notes and a lot of things that people said, so I have some things to follow up on, and certainly look forward to the next time to share more information.
Okay.
I will also send you an email with some additional details that you can pass along.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you all. Thank
Dr.
you.
Gomez?
Stay healthy.
Pardon?
Stay healthy.
Oh, yes. So I think we've lost most of our panelists, and I want to say thank you all, and we'll have to pick this thing back up and try it again if you're all down for the cause. I do think, there's an opportunity for us to do this again. Thank you so much. And everyone take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.